I want to begin with this very powerful and yet simple quote from Viktor Frankl, a Jewish Holocaust survivor and author of the book Man's Search for Meaning, in which he said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is where we can choose. In that space is our freedom." And he was using the word freedom there, I believe, very similarly to the way it's used in mindfulness. And comparable words in mindfulness are liberation, release. And a lot of times the words that an ancient tradition offers up are not necessarily the words that resonate with us in our lives at this time. And so in this moment, I'd like to invite you to spend a few moments reflecting on what is your particular phrase or word that means what these other words are pointing toward: liberation, freedom, release, ease. What's the word or phrase for you? Just taking a few moments to see what comes up for you. Just holding yourself in a place of spaciousness and allowing whatever comes up that's similar to freedom or release. And as we go along through this session and subsequent sessions, you may find yourself modifying that phrase, or you may find yourself discovering many new dimensions to it that really are meaningful to you. When I did this exercise for myself, what came up was fully alive, fully present. Whether I'm out looking at a fire sky on a spectacular morning like this, or whether I'm sitting in a place where my hip is a little bit uncomfortable and I'm exhausted. It's my willingness to be fully present, to feel fully alive in all of those situations that feels like space, that feels like freedom. Now, here's the great thing about space. It is not dependent on external circumstances. I expect most of us know Viktor Frankl's story and how he found space while he was being tortured on a daily basis in a concentration camp after his entire family had been taken away from him, and he strongly, and as it turns out accurately, suspected they were all dead. Not dependent on external circumstances. And it's available to all beings in all situations. Now, of course, it may be a little bit harder to be willing to be fully alive when I'm feeling exhausted or there's some discomfort in my body. But I figure if Viktor Frankl can do this in a concentration camp, that the rest of us can figure this out for ourselves. What really matters here, I think, is that we are creating an alternative. When we cultivate space, we're creating an alternative to being controlled by or vulnerable to instinct and habit. We capture the power of instinct in our lives in the first of the two conditions of being human beyond our control, how our brains have evolved, and our genetic composition. That's instinct. It's nature. It's just there. And we capture habit in our description of the third and fourth conditions of being human beyond our control, our experiences in life, especially when we were growing up, in social and culture norms. So we've got both nature and nurture. It's not a conversation about one versus the other. It's a conversation about all of them and how they interact and affect us. They're very powerful. We're all vulnerable to them. We all have those moments when we have been completely controlled by them. And so much of our lives is beyond our control. You know, whether it was raining or sunny this morning, how discomfort shows up in our bodies, how other people behave, what's going on that we read about in the news, none of that's within our control, which is what makes life hard. And when we cultivate space, when we find this place where we can make choices, where we can point toward our freedom, our release, however you describe it yourself, that's how we avoid making life even harder. That's how we sidestep our inclination to make all of these things about life that's not perfect not even harder. And allows us to show up modeling freedom, choice, whatever your phrase is, showing up in that way, which can make a difference in other people's lives. It makes a difference in our lives. It can make a difference in other people's lives. And finally, when we find that spaciousness, this is what gives us access to the 5 characteristics of our inherent enoughness. Our capacity to avoid, capacity to approach, our ability to self-regulate, to learn, and how we can employ awareness to access and cultivate all of these characteristics of enoughness. So over the next few moments, let's work with this in a practice. I'm not going to use the bell anymore since it doesn't work with the microphone very effectively. So we will just begin by settling in, finding that space, that place, that posture that our bodies appreciate. Taking a couple of deep breaths. Filling those lungs all the way to the shoulders. Holding our breath for a couple beats. And slowly releasing, letting go of any tension or energy that's present. And one more time. Settling in just a little bit more. Allowing our attention to come into the present moment. Allowing softening in the body, softening in our thoughts, softening in our emotions, softening in our spiritual being. And directing our attention which we're now so much more able to do, directing our attention to our breathing. Focusing our attention on one of the three ways that the breathing process shows up in our bodies. The flow of air in the chest or the belly. And in noticing our breathing, paying attention to how our breathing grounds us, gives us a sense of groundedness in our physicality, in this essential life-giving aspect of our physicality. And perhaps slowing our breathing a bit. And over the next 3 or 4 minutes, we will explore the different aspects of space, beginning with a sense in which space is very constricted. Imagining ourselves in a small, dark closet with barely room to turn around. Or if you're a bit claustrophobic, just imagining yourself with very few options and very few possibilities in life, feeling very constrained psychologically. Noticing what's happening in your body in this experience of constraint and constriction. Where is it showing up in the body? How does it feel? And letting go of that experience of spacelessness and shifting toward an experience of spaciousness. Imagining yourself outside on a day when the temperature's in the low to mid-70s, it's sunny, there's a soft breeze. You're standing on a hill with a big view, or perhaps looking out over the ocean, or one of the Great Lakes. What does this experience of spaciousness feel like? Where are you noticing this inside? Perhaps there's a sense of flow, ease. connecting to where this spacious experience shows up in your body is one of the ways of accessing it when events have caused you to feel constrained or constricted. Taking a deep breath, recalling this experience, recalling how this feels. Here is another practice for expanding our sense of space. During a meditation, as we're doing now, on each in-breath, expanding your awareness slightly, beginning by sensing your whole body. Extending the awareness on the in-breath to expand to your body in the chair or place you're seated. And on each in-breath, expand the awareness a little bit by taking in the room you're sitting in, recalling some details of the room and allowing them into your awareness. Being fully aware of your body, where you're seated, the room you're sitting in, including them all in your awareness, expanding the awareness on each in-breath. And perhaps you might want to experiment expanding your awareness beyond the room you're in, going to the building that you're in. Just a little bit at a time, focusing on the details, bringing them into your sense of vision, sense of what you're seeing internally. And staying with this process, gradually expanding beyond your building to your neighborhood, to your community. As I'm sitting here, I'm facing northwest. I'm imagining being able to see all the way to the Great Lakes and beyond, up through Canada, all the way to the North Pole. Seeing the entire Earth as if I'm in outer space. And as you're in this place of expanded spaciousness, bringing to mind your phrase that describes a sense of freedom, release, liberation, and connecting them, spaciousness and your personal phrase. And resting in that place. And in your own time, whenever you're ready, opening your eyes and coming back to our Zoom space.